Hold on. So long story short, what I wanted to say is when a class is structured like this, again, this is online. Online classes don't need Zoom classes, as Marilyn was just mentioning. It is not mandatory for you to be here, and it's also not mandatory for me to do it, but I like doing it because I like the communication with you guys. I like to know who's in my class. I like to know what you guys are working on. I just like, you know, to see where everyone is standing. I like to answer questions. I also, when I do the Zoom classes and run through the modules, I tend to focus on like the essential stuff that I think is really important. And sometimes for some people, it kind of sits a little better than just reading the material. When I learn, I have to say, I have to read something and I have to write it down in order to even retain the information. So I think if we do Zoom classes, sometimes it just kind of helps with the more complex stuff. So that's why I thought I'll just do it every Saturday, every 2 weeks, and then whoever wants to show up can show up. Again, you don't have to because the class works just without it. There's a lot of videos on here that I recorded for all the various case studies. So everything's explained anyway. But if you feel like doing it, you're welcome to do it. So if you guys are okay with it, I'm going to start sharing my screen. I'm going to walk you through our presentation for today. You can feel free to ask me questions in between. If I want to refer the question to when the presentation is done, I will let you know. Otherwise, I'll just answer your question. So don't hold back or something. I would like you to mute while I do the presentation and unmute only when you have a question, so we have a clean recording for everyone who's coming to join us later and watches this as a recording. So let's try to share the screen here. I've been having issues with my laptop. I hope this thing is working now. So can you guys see the PowerPoint presentation that I put together?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for giving me feedback on this. So I want to see if I can, what is this doing here? I want to see if I can get you back on my other screen. Uno momento, por favor. See, that's the thing that I don't like. It's not doing that. Okay. I'll do this. I'll do that. Let me see if can I get the chat back? I need more screens. Where's my chat? I don't know. Chat's not coming back. I don't know why it's not coming back. So for some reason, I'm not, here it is. Hold on. Just going to open up the chat box so I can see if you guys ask questions on chat. I'm going to put that to the side. I don't usually pay too much attention to the chat box when I do the presentation, but I'll try to look. All right, everyone. Good morning. Here we are. Zoom class number 2. We're going to talk about the modules 3 and 4. So 3, obviously, you guys worked through, so we can get into some questions about that if you have any. And I'm just gonna do a sum up of the most essential things of module 3 that I think are important. And then I'm going to do module 4, which is going to open up on Monday for you, and I'll give you the most essential items on that. So first, what I would like to do is find out if anyone had any questions regarding module 1 and 2. No? Okay. And by the way, what I've been, hold on, Maria, yes, let me just say something. I will be with you in a second. I did start a discussion portal. And what I do there is when I get questions that I think other people, or when I get questions repeatedly, for example, I copy that email. I'm not going to say who it's from, but I usually just copy the email from someone that has a good question, put it in the question discussion box on the discussion portal, and then write the answer there. So you can also go to the portal and ask questions, or give feedback or communicate on that portal if you want to. Just know that there is a discussion portal where questions as they're coming in are also being answered. You go, Marita.
Yes. Is there a law in the United States that requires exhibitors to reveal their box office results? Or do they do it voluntarily?
No, there is no law.
Okay.
Here's what happens, because I think it's a very good question. When we do independent movies, I mean, for the studio movies, it's pretty normal. They go into the theaters, and the box office is being tracked by the exhibitors in many cases. And then it's being publicized at Box Office Mojo, on IMDb, or wherever. It is obviously voluntary. And for the studio movies, it's usually easier to find that information. It's also possible to find that information for independent movies that were released by studios, because they track that stuff, right? What I have found harder, and usually if I find it, it seems to be incorrect, is when I look for box office information for like totally independent movies that may have been released after the fact in the US or have not been released theatrically at all. Because what that would tell me then is there's an independent movie, for example, that would be released simultaneously, maybe on TV and maybe on demand. And some people do simultaneous releases, or it's just going on demand and theatrical simultaneously, right? I find it often hard to see the real numbers for those, because what happens here is they get a minimum guarantee paid by the US buyer, usually, meaning the producer, meaning I as the producer would get a minimum guarantee by a buyer, which is kind of a contractual relationship I have with the buyer, which I may or may not share. I may share the number, I may not share the number. The same is with any international buyer that I do a deal with. And in this case, obviously, my sales agent would enter in those deals. My sales agent is not going to release that information unless they want to. So what happens is the sales agent goes, sells my movie to Germany, to Italy, to Spain. And then the German, Italy, and Spain distributor decides, oh, we're going to put it in the theaters. And then they locally start putting in the box office information. So that's how I get to see some of my box office numbers on some of my movies, which usually I wouldn't get because I already got my minimum guarantee. I know what that is, but I don't know how much money they're making in the territory by showing it in the theaters. I have no idea. So sometimes I see on IMDb that they put those numbers in, but it could be right, it could be wrong. So I find it harder, honestly, my dear, for independent movies that are not entirely handled by a studio or even handled domestically by a studio. So I don't know how accurate that is. And what I've also found that is often not accurate is the budget numbers. So when you go on IMDb and they tell you this is the budget, I know my budgets aren't correct. I can tell you that, because I don't want people to know what I'm paying for this thing. I want them, it's a Porsche, and Porsche costs these things. You don't want to reveal that you pay the Porsche for, you build the Porsche for like $20,000 and you sell it for $80,000. I mean, it's just not, it's a business thing. So the budgets are usually not correct on IMDb. So I wouldn't, that said, if you do a business plan, let's say, where we're going to talk about the business plan today a little bit, where you say, I'm making a movie and my comparable movies are these movies, and I got this information from IMDb, and that's what the comparable budgets are, right? You can use that information because that's reported information, and you can use that and you can put that in your business plan, because it says here movie was made for $3 million, says here box office was $60 million. Use that information because it helps you, and you have a source that is not you, and that's IMDb, and that's a valid source. So I sometimes use that source, knowing even this is probably not correct. Just, I mean, who knows if these numbers are right or wrong? Whatever people report is what they report, honestly. I know I've done so many film and television projects that I kind of know, how much money I could be making, should be making. And of course, I know how much money I make because I have to report to my investors, and my collection agent does that. So, I know the ranges of things, but I can, of course, speak for other producers and how they do it. Long answer to a short question. Anyone else has a question?
Yeah, I had a question.
Go ahead.
Hey, this is my name is Anish. It's kind of related to the previous question that was asked, but so what you just described is related more so to independent film, is my understanding. But let's say you're a major studio, like a Disney or a Netflix or whatever, and you are like a publicly traded company, and you have to release your financial statements, are audited, et cetera, et cetera. For more of those larger studios, is it fair to say or fair to assume that those budgets are a lot closer to what is actually true, just because they have that transparency component?
If you are a publicly traded company, independent producers that decided to became larger in size and created a library. For studios that are publicly traded, obviously you have to show proper numbers. The financials have to be correct. That is absolutely true. So if you ever wanted to research, what certain movies made that were produced by studios that are publicly traded, you can absolutely look at those reports and you will likely find the reports to be correct. Yes, I would say that's true. In the world that we're operating in today, as a majority, I mean, Anish, if you go and make a movie with Disney, for example, none of what we're doing here applies to you anyway, because they're just going to hand you the money and you're going to be a happy camper and all is well. But if you go to Disney and they're only buying domestic from you, or let's say you do a movie and ABC Disney, the network, buys the US rights from you, then all of what we're learning here is applicable. So this is the structure that we're teaching here, or that we're discussing in this class, is about everything but a studio paying your entire movie, or a network paying your entire project, or a streamer paying your entire project. We do touch upon a little bit if and when the network or a streamer pays your entire project and the studio pays your entire project, relating to what that means for you. What that means for you is you have less control, but you get a project made, so you should be doing the deal. And the buyer, in this case, the studio, networks, or streamer, is take on the responsibility for financing and distribution. You don't have that. You would be involved in the development of the idea, in the creating of the content, as much as they would want you to be involved. And your deal is you're going to get a producer fee, you're going to hopefully get some back-end profit participation, and that's kind of the contractual structure that you will likely be facing in a situation like that. Short of that, you have a thing that's, as a producer, you get your producer fee, you control the journey, the development and the production and the financing of the content, and you control all ancillary rights revenues, not just the distribution rights revenues that you are making, but also all the ancillary rights revenues for your content forever, because the IP is yours. In the first scenario, the IP would be with the studio and with the streamer or the network station. That's the difference. So I would always say, when I work on an idea and I pitch it, whatever scenario shows up for me that I can make work, I do. I'm not, of course I know what kind of deal it should be, so I'm not taken to the cleaners, but I also wouldn't say that I'm too harsh on pushing too much, because I focus on, I want to get these things made. I want to get it made in a good quality. I want to get it made in a way that some money comes my way and ends up in my bank account in some shape or form. So I deal a lot with young producers that start, right? So they come and send your stuff to me, and I like dealing with emerging producers because I find their ideas often very fresh, and producers like that, they're not so jaded, and they're fun to work with. So for me, it's a beautiful experience, right? Which is one of the reasons why I'm teaching this class, because I meet you all, and sometimes I end up working with some of you. What I don't appreciate, I honestly have to say, is the kind of producer there's two kinds. One, the kind of producer that's very lazy in development. They don't want to do anything. They just hand it over to me and say, oh yeah, script's good enough. What do you think is not good enough? What do we need to do? Why do we need to rewrite this? And why do I have to do more things? Like, if a producer comes to me and says, here's my project, do everything, so you go do your homework first, and when you're done, you come back to me and I'll tell them what I want them to do. And then if they start bitching around, I'm like, I'm not your partner. You need to do some of the work that the producer does, and handing me just an idea doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean you didn't even begin to do what the producer has to do, because you have to form the idea into something that is actually valuable, meaning work on attachments, try to find some money for development, don't hit me up for everything. The second thing that happens is, and it doesn't happen just to me, it happens to everyone who finances and produces, who gets approached by other people to produce, is that producers come and they automatically think, because I've done a few things, I know the stuff, that I'm trying to take advantage of them. And do I want to make a good deal? Of course, but it's not in my interest to take advantage of an emergent producer, because they become resentful. It's going to be a very unpleasant experience for me, because it's like a marriage for the time you're doing the project, which could be 1 or 2 years. I want to have a pleasant relationship. I want to know that you're okay with the deal. I'm okay with the deal. The deal is always going to be a little bit not okay for both of us, because there is no deal that we will ever enter into where everyone is going to be super happy. There's always a give and take. There's always a little bit of a compromise we all have to do when we do these deals. It's just a given, and it should be like that. And that's okay. But there are producers who are so pushy for what they think they should deserve, and you know, it's like, oh, this is getting annoying. It's like, it's, you know, it gets complicated. And if I have to spend a lot of time figuring out a deal with someone who hasn't done anything, that's already a waste of my time. I want to guide them through the idea. I want to guide them through the proposal in the beginning, and then they can tell me if they have any feedback, what they would like to change, and then I want this conversation to be over. I don't want to take more than maybe 2 days to negotiate a co-production deal. If I do this more time, it just takes away time from stuff that I could be working on my own project. That's just me. And I'm being honest with you how I deal with emerging producers, because I don't like headaches. I've done enough. I can pick and choose who I work with. I want to have a nice, easy, pleasant experience for everyone, and I want to try to make money for everyone. So that's kind of what it is. And what I'm experiencing is what other people are experiencing too. I've had to cancel projects that were really strong ideas because the producers were just so annoying. And I'm talking about emerging producers as well as beginners. It's when it gets to like the little things. When I want the trailer, I want the same trailer than the A-level cast. I mean, it's stuff like that where it's like, you just stop it. I'm not kidding. So it's like these things where stupid little shit. So don't deal with it. Just, you know, look at the big picture. What's my producer fee? What's my risk? Do they want me to take responsibility for something without giving me the right to handle it? So for example, if you do a deal, or I do a deal with the financier, let's say, where the financier says to me, I have to have approval over this, I have to have approval over that, I have to have approval over this. And partially the approval relates to cost, budgeting, and things that I would control if I would approve them. So I would, in this situation, I would say, if you as a partner approve items that you make me responsible for, I need to be the one approving those, because otherwise I cannot be responsible for the things you want me to be responsible for. So when you do a deal with someone who says to you, I'm going to give you the money, but I want, like investors often do that. I want approval over everything. I want approval over what the script is in the end of the day. I want approval over who the cast is in the end of the day. And I want approval over all the distribution deals. And I want approval over the budget. Tricky. I understand the want to do this, but you, investor, have a shoe company in Peru, and you don't know what I'm doing here. You don't know what cast we need to choose to hit our numbers. You don't know the finance plan we need to put together. You don't even know what a line item budget looks like. You don't even know how to put the line items together. So this is going to be problematic. So I tell them, if you want to give the money to me, you have to let me do my job. I will always ask you or tell you if I'm changing something that changes the value of the project. If I attach Joe Schmo and told you I'm attaching Jason Statham, I'm going to have a conversation with you if you're okay with Joe Schmo. And I will explain to you what that does to our project. And if you're still okay with it, we'll do it. So it's very important for you when you start working with investors that you limit the approvals that you give them. You can give them what is called meaningful consultation rights, but you cannot give them final approval, and you cannot also give final approval to your directors. We're going to get into that a little bit in a minute, but I just wanted to throw that out there because I was thinking about it. Do we have questions about this? Okay, we're diving in. So I did spend a little time in module 3, I think it was, to talk a little bit about the creative stuff. Now, this is a finance class, I understand that, but the financing we're doing is about something that we are creating. It's driven by what we're actually producing. And what we're actually producing, film or television, is driven by a commercial taste bud, for lack of a better word. So we need to create something that can make money. And in order for it to make money, it needs to be globally viable. And in order for it to be globally viable, it needs to have a certain structure in place that relates to its story, the story itself, to be commercial. Now we're not talking about the art house movie, the French little art house movie, even though I'm going to give you an example in a minute that, is, told as a 3-hour movie. And in the end of the movie, we have no idea what we just watched, which happens to me a lot with French movies. Anyway, so we're not talking about that. We're talking about a TV show or a film that is structured in a commercial way. So when someone sends me a script, I read the first 30 pages, and a lot of executives do this and they'll never tell you, but this is what they do. They read the first 30 pages, which is considered the exposition. In the exposition, we get to know all our lead characters, we get to know who they are, we get to know where they should be going, and we get to know where they want to be going, which might not be where they should be going, and we get to know what the issue is, what the problem is, what the obstacle is that they have to overcome. All this starts in the first 30 pages. And it should be in the first 30 pages if we're talking about a movie script that's about 100, 110, maybe 120 max pages long, right? So if I read those first 30 pages and I'm bored to death, I'm not going to continue, because I already know whoever wrote that script has no idea what they're doing. They're not telling me what I need to know. And if I read further, I'm just going to find more of stuff that I have to fix. I don't have time to fix.
Well,
so can whoever is not muted, please mute.
hi.
Everyone, please mute yourselves for a second.
I'm doing better. Today is better.
Kathy, I think
Yeah.
Kathy, you're not muted. Hold on, let me move Kathy there.
No, it was just
Mute Kathy. She's gone now. I don't think she knew that she was sharing her conversation with someone, with us. We'll listen in later. Anyway, so where was I? So the first 30 pages are important, and it's really, we're talking about a movie. It's the same for a TV pilot. The TV pilot is shorter. You're looking at about 60 pages if it's an hour, maybe a little less. Here, it's the first third. So whatever the first third is, you need to get going. You need to go like this, these are my people. And when I read the first 30 pages, I know exactly who these actors are. I know what they would be wearing. I know what their apartment would look like. I know what the car would be that they would be driving. I know what the lover would be that they would be loving. I know the pets that they would have. I know everything about them, because the way you describe them is so strong and so grounded in the reality that you create. And it could be any reality, science fiction, animation. Give me the world that you want me to be in. But these characters have to be grounded in that world, and it has to feel real. So I need to know them in the first 30 pages. I need to know their quirks. I need to know their problems. I need to know their good side, their bad side. I need to get a sense of what is going to go very wrong with them. I need to know all this. And I need to know what the movie is about. So if it's, someone dies, of course, in our genre, the global genre, someone's going to die at some point. So I need to know, what are we dealing with in this movie? Start with the actual issue that I'm facing, that I have to overcome with this character. So the first 30 pages are the most important 30 pages. The first third is the most important third that you will give to anyone. Because if that third is not delivering on the premise of drawing and sucking the reader in, you've lost them. You've also lost them when you watch a movie. Like you see yourself when you watch a TV show or you watch a movie. And when it starts slow, you give it a little time to kind of go like, well, maybe it goes a little, maybe there's some stuff happening later, maybe. I will do this, click, bye. So, and a lot of people are like that. So just know your job with the executive like me, or the network executive, or the studio, is to draw them in the first literally 5 minutes. If you can make that happen, make that happen. So, and then this is called the exposition or the setup. The next 60 pages are going to be about how does this actor and these actors start to solve the issue. So on the next 30 pages, they try to solve the issue. Then in the middle of the script, everything blows up. It goes a different direction. We're like, oh my God, we thought in the first act that was the problem. There is actually this whole other problem right in the middle of the script that we now have to deal with. And now the problem gets bigger, and it starts to really be overwhelming for our cast. Then in the next 30 pages, they're going to try to fix it. And then the last third act is going to give us another surprising twist and turns, because in the third act, you're going to resolve things but you're going to divide the third act into like 2 acts as well, where it looks like they're resolving stuff in the first half of the third act, only to be faced with something entirely different. And the last 10 pages or 20 pages is when the solving happens. So we call it the showdown. It sounds very mathematical, I know, but believe you me, it works. If you can keep that in mind when you read a script, when you work with your writer on your script, when you write a script, you already have a huge advantage. Just keep that little thing in mind, that this dramatic structure works in the Western world. Asia is a little different. However, Asia does buy our action thriller stuff because that genre works there. Now, if we're talking about drama, if we're talking about comedy, comedy is very difficult to sell. Now, a comedy will follow this structure too, but selling comedies in the international world is a little harder because the sense of humor changes. So what works in the US, for example, doesn't always work in Germany. What works in Germany doesn't always work in the US because there's cultural nuances in the sense of humor that will not always translate. Another important genre that I like that doesn't always translate is drama. And the worst part is period drama. And I think I mentioned in the first class how everyone always says, don't do period drama. And then all you see is period drama. So there are ways to tell period drama when you follow the structure that I just mentioned to you and make the period drama appear like a commercial action genre driven piece. And you don't really, because dramas are usually told slower, which is fine. You know, you take your time in embracing the character, you see beautiful pictures, and it's all light and like this, everything is slow. That's okay, maybe. But when I do dramas, I structure them like I would structure my thriller or my action movie in the way that I just described. That way I can still sell them. And for you, if you work on a drama and you want to do a period drama and you really are drawn to that genre, I would urge you to try to apply this structure even for that genre and for your comedy genre, for all the genres you will be working on. So just think about the fact that something has to happen at a certain time in your script, like you're doing a math equation. We're now back to finance. Like you're doing a math equation. You're structuring your pages in a way that give you plot points, and that's what drives the audience. Any questions about this? Good. So let's talk about what yeah, Marilyn, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, like it's really interesting. I was doing a lot of reading this week about different types of genres in the filmmaking. Right. And because I have two different classes, and I just noticed there is like a load of drama, a load of everything, and it's like it's wide open. But like you were saying, you have to tap into what's really selling to get your story sold. So
right, and even for you, I mean, in your case, you work off a book that you put together, right? If I remember this correctly, right?
Yes.
So for you, it's even harder because you now have to. And for everyone who works, if you guys option a book, right? A book is a two-dimensional storytelling device. It's not necessarily told that way in a movie because you have to elevate to a third dimension. So you might decide, I'm going to make the lead character not the lead character of the book. I'm going to tell the story out of a different perspective. Could be. You might decide that you lose entire storylines in the book because they're not helping you with the storyline that you really need to tell in the movie or in the TV show or in the miniseries. So adding that dimension means you take your book, Marilyn, you think about the story that is in your book, and then you look at the structure that I just described and you say, okay, how would I tell that story applying a commercial plot point driven structure? How do I elevate my characters off the page and make them multidimensional? I gave, I think it was to Toru, the example of what is a character that is authentically innovative? What does that actually mean? And it was a great question. And I want to share with you because I think I used the word authentic. I forgot what I used in the model, but it was something that could be like fish or meat for anyone, right? What I mean by the characters that I want you to design is, and we're going to talk about this actually, and I'm jumping ahead here, but since we're talking about it right now, I want you to design a character that is very unique. It's someone that I haven't seen before. Like we all watched the series Breaking Bad. And this character, who is a teacher turned drug lord, is not something we have ever seen before, nor would we anticipate this to happen. I mean, seriously, when I watched that series, I'm like, what are they doing? They're doing what? He's going to be killing people? What? So they took it to a whole different level, but that's the level we are on today. This is how story is told today. So my characters can't just be like the characters in the 80s and 90s, 2000, even 2015, or whenever we, do things. Sorry, we now have to come up with characters that are badass and are good ass. So they have to have very interesting facets to them that are very unique to them. We see shows today where you have lead characters that have a handicap. The good doctor, an autistic lead. You have the monk who's afraid of germs. You have Lucifer, the devil, who is kind of nice. You have all these shows where the lead character is many different things in many different facets. And yes, we follow them, but there is so much going on with the character, and they're always torn in some way. And there's something special about them that is new and fresh. That's what I mean by design someone who you haven't seen, who has all these things. Give them some quirks. Someone always picks their nose or their ear, or they do something weird, or when they see the color green, they have to barf. I mean, some stupid nonsense that I come up with. Makes no sense, of course. But what I'm saying is, give them something, play with them that is unique, where you create a character that you haven't seen before. That is the idea here by making an authentic character in your movie. And we're talking about your lead characters. Now, when you have a lead, you have also the opposite, the villain. I cannot tell you how many scripts I read where the villain is just a lame-o. And when the villain is a lame-o, my whole story falls apart. I have to have a badass villain who also has a good side to him, who I actually like. I like the fact that he has to kill these poor people because he has a good reason to do it, and I totally get it. And I'm sorry, we're going to have to probably not do good things to the villain, but I kind of like the villain. I want to be torn. I want to be drawn to these bad characters in a way that I'm asking myself, why am I liking this guy? I should be hating this guy because he's the villain. This is what's changing these days in our storytelling structure. We have to also give the story arcs a twist that is not foreseen. So when I'm writing a TV show right now, and my husband laughs out loud because he's a writer too. And I'm not really a writer because I'm a producer, but I've read 1,000 scripts, and I have produced a few things, and I actually led writers camps. In the beginning, when I moved to LA, I had a writers agency, so I had to train writers. So and I studied writing too, but I just never, did it. But now I find myself having fun with it. So I'm writing this pilot script, and I'm going like all out. And these people do stupid things. And he's reading this like, oh my God, I can't believe you came up with that. And he's doing what? And who is going to be, I have no idea who's going to be winning and losing at the end. And it's like, it's going to be the most unlikely person that's going to be our killer. Or it's the most unlikely relationship that this person is going to have with this person. I always think about who is the least most likely person that I could make the bad guy, or the who's behind it all guy or girl. And that's what I put in there. So I kind of start from the back and go to the front, if that makes any sense. So long story short, when we work on a story, we need to think about a high concept idea, an idea that has many layers to it. It needs to be fresh and it needs to be innovative. So yes, of course, we're dealing with likely a structure in a genre movie where someone dies and we have to figure out who killed them. Yes, okay, that story is done 50,000 times. It's about how we tell that story. It's about how the person dies, why they died, who is behind it, and what all reveals. The how is more important than the what actually happens. Just that's something I really need to drill you in. So surprising twists and turns means if I read a script that has a story structure that I've seen before in a close fashion like this, I'm like, eh. Or that reminds me of something else, eh. So you want to write something or work on something that is not like anything else. Like when you watch Fargo, for example, I don't know how they do it, but they always come up with stuff where I go like, I can't believe they're doing this. Like it's, you know, it's Fargo. It's the same movie made into like a miniseries, different actors, and they're all different in different times. Genius, I say. I mean, this is the kind of level where I go, okay, this is storytelling 101. They're taking something that is known and make it unique in its own little way for this own little miniseries version of this Fargo season. This is what I want you to think about when you work on stories and put stories together. You also want to have story arcs and characters that have a satisfying arc to them. So the many times I watch a movie and read scripts where at the end I'm like, this ending sucks. I wasted 90 minutes to watch this. I wasted an hour to get to this conclusion. I watched a whole season of, what was it the other day that I watched where I was very disappointed? Westworld. To get to that ending? What is wrong with you people? You were just, I think you made that shit up as you were going. Westworld for sure, because all the versions of Bernard and why they do what they do, I'm like, come on guys. Someone was on drugs and just made it up as they were going. Anyway, so it made no sense to me. And so I was a little disappointed at the end because I was hoping for better. And that's, you know, what you need to think about. You need to have a satisfying ending that satisfies not just on an emotional level. This lead actor now got what he really needed rather than what he wanted, like in life. And it needs to be satisfying in the sense that you have a takeaway. The takeaway is, I didn't know that I could work on this kind of issue like that. Or the takeaway for me is, I actually got inspired by what I saw here and it relates to me in this way. So if you get these two satisfactory takeaways, A, the person is inspired by the story and what happened, and B, the lead actor or the lead story ends in a way that is satisfying. Those two things are important. When you put a story together, you also think early about your audience. You know, you might work on a story that's a young adult audience, which is a very hip audience right now. That storytelling structure and the characters are very different than if you go global. Global meaning anyone from like 13 to 75 is watching this. So you work with different story elements and different characters depending on who your audience is. You might just decide, I'm going to do a small art house movie that I want to get into the festivals. That's okay too. That just means that movie is made for under $100,000 and you may or may not make money. There is that. So you have to think about your audience early on to define your revenue potential also, because your audience is basically what dictates what's going to happen financially to your project. The sales estimates are obviously guiding you to that too. So once you put a little bit of a package together, or you have a vision for your package, the sales agent can talk to you about what they believe the revenues could be when they put together your sales estimates. And when they do pre-sales, you get verification of, you know, are we in the right direction? Is someone wanting my story and this concept and this package? And am I getting pre-sales done? At least some, which we know is harder to do today. You know, as I mentioned before, I was able to pre-sale 50 to 120% of my budgets in even years up to like 2010 and 12. And now I'm lucky when I get 30% sold. So times have changed on the pre-sale level, but having no pre-sales or very little pre-sales is a dangerous foreshadowing of the fact that no one really wants your story, and then you really need to think about if you want to make it. What I like also about creating story is if you're able to create a bit of a buzz online. Like for Marilyn, her project is a book, right? She wrote this book, people read the book, so there is an inherent audience already there. If you have something like that that has an audience already, like a game, maybe like a video game, and I mean, it's obviously expensive to option a well-known video game, but I'm saying if you have an IP that has some kind of relevance. For example, I looked at a book series that had some mediocre success in Germany, and I optioned that. That alone gave me a little bit of a leg up because it's an IP, people have seen it, it's a little bit proven. So there is a little bit of that you can build on, and you can create a little buzz online. Like when you do a Kickstarter campaign for your movie, or let's say you do a Kickstarter campaign for the trailer for the movie. It's also helpful because you create a buzz, you create like a little bit of a excitement about your project. So I would not underestimate using and doing these things. So we know that—
Quick question.
Yes, go ahead.
With creating online marketing buzz, would that come out of your P&A investors' money, or are you pulling that directly from the budget?
It's basically part of your development budget.
Okay.
It is likely an early investment that you would be making, or a development investor who works with you would be making. It is not, at that time, it's not the P&A. When you're done with your movie, right? When it's finished and now you're creating the campaign to release, at that time, it's your P&A budget, absolutely. Yeah. So when we're securing the rights, we talked about the fact that we have to make sure that we do it right. So when we get a project given to us, in many cases, a producer comes to you and says, I have this great project. It's based on the life story of someone whose news article I read. Your job is to say, okay, who is it about on this guy, news article, his life? Okay, where is the deal with the guy? Where is the exclusive deal with this person that we can tell the movie story or TV show about him? So that person has to be locked up with you, by you, or by the producer that you're working with. And then you do a deal with the writer, with the producer, in a way that all rights are going to you. You create a chain that has the rights flow end up with you controlling them. So this chain of title means you're creating a chain of where the rights are coming from. Now, if a writer comes to you with an original script and you like the script and you're the producer who's producing it, you do a deal with the writer that's likely an option agreement to say, I'll give you $1,000, you give me the option for 2 years, and once we get going, I pay you another $30,000 for the purchase price of the script. That's an option purchase agreement. If you do an option agreement, you always put the purchase price in there. We also talk about how many rewrites he has to do, and ideally he has to do them for free or very little money. That's the idea when you work with a writer whose idea is the one that you are producing. If you have an idea and you write it on a piece of paper and it's a little treatment and it's 2 pages, and you go to a writer and say, I really want you to write the script about this, first thing you do is you register your idea with the WGA, you register your idea with the Copyright Office, and then you go to the writer and say, I'm going to do a writer for hire deal with you, and you're going to not have any rights, but I'm going to pay you for the work. So you're basically paying him in stages and doing a deal with him where you keep the rights, but he gets paid for the work that he's doing. So that's the other coin to the optioning the rights from the writer whose idea it was. But if you work with a producer who has an idea from a writer, either it's the writer's original idea or it's the producer's idea or it's someone like totally different underlying IP, you need to make sure that all these chains are locked up. Everyone has the right to work with all these little elements so that you can take them over, and then you do, in essence, again, an option agreement. That's in this case a co-production agreement that gives you the right to exclusively put this project together for a certain amount of time, and then you have to get going. If you spend money during that time of this option, and you likely will, like William was mentioning, who pays for this trailer? You are, or your investor is. Anything you pay during that development time, you have to write down, you have to keep the receipts, because if you don't make the project, this is going to be called a turnaround provision that you will always have in your contract, which says, I spent all the money during this development phase, but I was not able to put the movie together. Now I'm not going to pay the guy $30,000 for the rights because I decided to let it go. Another producer then comes and says, I really like this, and I'm going to do this. Your development spend and expenses will now have to be taken over by the next producer. They have to pay you that. In many cases, there's going to be a conversation about, did you really spend 30,000, William? Or maybe can we agree on, I'll give you 10 or 15 and we'll call it a day. These are the conversations that are going to happen. But you're going to want to make sure you have a turnaround clause in all these agreements so that any money you spend during the development phase can come back to you in the event you're not making the show for whatever reason. So you're not losing all this investment. So it's important that you make this part of your chain of title. So the different agreements that we're dealing with here is underlying IP agreement to secure whatever underlying IP there is, option agreement if it's anyone's rights, writer for hire agreement, and you have also the option to do a co-production agreement or a shopping agreement. Now the shopping agreement is my least favorite because many people do the mistake that the shopping agreement basically says, I like you, you like me, I see what I can do. Bad idea. You want to say, I like you, you like me, I will do this in this time, and if I do, I own your ass. So you want to make sure that the shopping agreement really protects you as the producer who takes on the responsibility to make someone else's project happen without paying anything for it, because shopping really means you're not paying an option fee, you're basically just trying your best. But you are trying your best and you are spending time and you're potentially putting up money for development, so you need to be protected by whoever lets you shop. So that means you're going to have your producer fee in there, you're going to have all your if-come scenarios in there. If I bring this much money, this is how much money I'm getting. If I bring that much money, this is how much money I'm getting. If I'm bringing this actor, that's how much money more I'm getting. And my profit participation increases with everything I do. So just make sure that your if-come scenario is very defined in the shopping agreement and that every milestone is spelled out. I know it's a little daunting to do this in the beginning, and often people get a little nervous because they're just friends and it's a friend who gave me the story and I know he's not going to screw me over. They always screw you over in 90% of the cases, because the minute you have someone that you actually got to do this and pay for this, you are basically losing power, because you're giving the other person who lets you shop the power to dictate what's going to happen to you, because they could theoretically say, well, if you want to get it done, this is what I want. And greed is a nasty thing. So don't put yourself into that situation. Just make a shopping agreement that defines everything that an if-come scenario has to do with. Now, when we talk about packaging and budgeting, there are a few little steps I want to just make you aware of. It is a good idea to attach your director first, and it's a good idea to meet with the director and say, here's the script that I have. How would you realize this? What would be your vision? Don't say a word about what your vision is. Don't say anything, zip it. You're only asking the question to the director, how would you make this happen? What is the mood? What are the colors? What are the characters? Where would you lead them? How would you do this? Let them talk. Then they share their vision with you. And that might be a vision that is like, this is terrible. This does not go along with anything I thought about. And you say, oh, thank you for having a coffee and have a good life. Or it might be a vision where you go, well, this is exactly the direction I'm thinking, close enough. Or it might be a vision where you go, I had no idea. I didn't even think of this. This is much better than what I thought. All these things can happen, right? You make a decision at that point whether or not you want to work with this person. And only the last two scenarios are the scenarios where you're going to engage this person. The first scenario is a huge red flag. Do not go there. You will not, in many cases, be able to talk the director into your version, because they will always have their little version somewhere in their little heart, and they're going to try to press that on you at the right time. And it always creates conflict and contrast, and you don't need it. So make sure that the director you're choosing has a version of a vision that either matches yours or elevates yours. So then the second thing you have to do in that agreement is that you keep the approval rights, obviously, over the script and the cast. And the director might want some money for developing the script further with you, which is okay. So you put a little like development fee in there and you pay them for the time being, and that's okay too. And then of course you put the purchase price in, how much engagement price, how much money you'll give them. All of this is in the agreement. And the budget range that you're all thinking about doing this is in the agreement. You put in the agreement also that obviously the film or TV show has to be bonded by a completion bonder, and the director has to be a bondable director. That's also in the agreement. And then there's going to be in the agreement that if cast does not attach because of the director, and I had a situation where I had very well-known directors attached to my movies, and I didn't think that these well-known directors would not be supported by the cast I'm going to be attaching, but that happened to me. The cast was very not inspired. They just said, oh, there's a very well-known director, he always does this, and you know, I've seen this so many times. I don't want to do this. I want to do something else. I want to be exploring, and I want to work with some young hip director who is totally sexy and who gets me out of my comfort zone. I mean, actors, you know, they're little children, as we know, and they want certain things. So what it means for me is if I wanted this actor that is the A-level actor, I have to rethink my director now, right? So obviously with the actor, then what I do is, okay, if this is the kind of, if you don't want this guy, who do you want? So I force them to give me a list, so I don't have the same conversation with the next guy that I'm hiring, because I need to get this movie made at some point. So the actors usually then give me a list, we'll talk about who they would approve, but it means for my director that I have to let them go. because I can't get the movie made otherwise, because the actors are usually, in many cases, more important than the director, unless it's a Tarantino or a Spielberg or a Soderbergh or any of these people. Then you're okay with keeping him, and then it doesn't really matter who's in the movie or the TV show. But if it's anyone even a little lower than that, your cast is probably going to pull the value of your project. With TV, it's a little different. TV is the showrunner that's going to pull the project. So you have a conversation, this very conversation you're going to have with the showrunner. You have this series idea, you have this Bible, you have the characters you want to go in a certain place, in a certain range, you have these arcs that you're thinking about. And showrunner says, so not right, or yeah, we could make this work, good, or here's what we could also do, we'll make this work. Same conversation that you would have with the showrunner that you would have with the director. The cast for a TV series is not as important as the showrunner, so you don't have to worry about the cast. You do have to always make sure you have a bondable clause in there. Showrunner has to be bondable, and you have to make sure that you approve the script and you approve the budget. So for both director and showrunner agreements, you keep all approvals, final cut and script and budget approval. So that's very important for you to insist on. Do not ever give a director final cut. I don't care who they are, you do not, because you're responsible for the product, you're responsible for your investors, and if you don't have final cut, you don't know the product that you're bringing out, and you cannot be guiding the revenues. You cannot be responsible for the revenues. So final cut takes all the approval away from you for the product that you're actually creating, so you can't do that. And nowadays, directors don't ask for final cut. Again, maybe Tarantino and Soderbergh and Spielberg are the exceptions to the rules, and they probably know more than me, so that's okay to give them final cut. But anyone else, don't give them final cut. Now, when you have the cast you attach through a pay-or-play offer. Now, at the time you make the pay-or-play, in very many cases, your movie is not financed. That's just how it is, because if it would be financed, you just go do the movie. So you have to explain to the agent how you're going to finance your movie and what your plan is. So that's why the business plan that we're putting together in this course, or that we're going to, talk about how to put together, is essential in having that early conversation with your agent. It's not just important for the investor, but it's also important for the conversation with the agent, because the agent wants to know, I'm dealing with someone who knows what they're doing. They have a path for getting this made, because I don't want to get egg on my face when this thing blows up. And then my cast client says, you told me I should do this, and my name is all over this, and this thing doesn't happen, and that's bad for my career. So that's what the agents are afraid of, and they have a right to be afraid of that. So they want to make sure that their cast member, one way or the other, is being paid, and this thing is hopefully going to happen. There is, for you, in the pay-or-play offer, the equation that says, dear Jason Statham, I'm going to make the movie 13. I'm going to pay you $5 million. I'm going to shoot it in New York, and I'm going to pay, and it's going to be for $25 million, and I'm going to shoot it round about June, July. That's kind of what goes in there. That's a pay-or-play. And you're going to get a perk. You can fly in your girlfriend, you can fly in your mother, and you can fly in your dog, and you get a trailer that has all the shenanigans in there that you want. These are the perks. So all that stuff is in the pay-or-play offer, right? There's going to be one sentence in there that will save your butt. It's going to say, this pay-or-play offer is subject to the bonding of the project, to completion bond issuance. The completion bond is only going to be issued when all the money is there, because the insurance cannot insure a project that is not fully financed. And when the project is fully financed, you can obviously pay the actor and go. And when the project is not fully financed, there is no project. So for you, it's an insurance to say, I'm going to, this pay-or-play offer is subject to the closing of the completion bond. However, I would urge you to be very careful in actually using this, because if you ever come to a place where you have to cancel the project and you cannot pay the actor, it can harm you. It can harm your career, because this agent will never forget your name because you made them look bad. The idea for you is to talk to an investor early on and say, here's my game plan. You have a similar conversation with the investor than you have with the agent, where you say, Jeanette told me this is going to be my budget, and this is going to be my sales estimates, and this is going to be what the finance plan is going to look like, and here's going to be who I'm planning on casting, and here's going to be who I'm planning on having direct this, and these are my co-producing people that have the track record. You give the investor a plan of attack, and the investor knows that if you don't attach the actor, there's not going to be a project. They know that. But if you do attach the actor, then there is going to be a project. So if the investor invests in helping you attach the actor, the project is going to go. The likelihood of that happening is very high. So that's a conversation you have with your investor to back your pay or play offer. So you need to talk to them early on and say, we're going to pay Jason Statham $5 million. Your investment is $8 million. So are you willing to use $5 million of that as a proof of funds and to show to the agent? And are you willing to release 25% of that $5 million for the actor to go into escrow with the agency to hold this actor? That's a conversation you have with your investor. It is to their benefit to do that because that helps the project gets made, but they want to see a plan for you to actually, hold on, knowing how to finish all of it, because scratching my throat. Because what happens is, if they give you what is called basically development money, is of course we're going to have the development money in the turnaround, but if you don't get this thing done and he gave you development money and the money is gone, he's not going to like it. So the investor wants to see your plan of attack, how to get it all finished. And that's again what you need this business plan pitch deck for. And you need to think it all through. You're in this business plan pitch deck, you're pretending like all of this has already happened. Like when you create a new company, a startup, when you create a business plan for that, you also put a plan together that basically says, this is going to happen and this is what's going to happen once this is going to happen. It's the same thing for a movie or a TV show. So just think of it, think of your pitch deck / business plan as if you were having a startup company. So the cast, coming back to pay or play, agent is going to want to see some backing. And you're going to need to talk to your investor about it, unless you have somewhere, you know, $5 million lying around, maybe grandmother, who knows. That's going to be what you're going to have a conversation about early on. Now the budget, when we come up with a budget, when I read a story, and I'm of course, I'm like every producer, I'm like, yeah, this is a great story, I need $20 million to make this. Nowadays, you can't really do that anymore. The movies that I did that were like 20, 25, now I have to produce them for about half that to even be feasible because of the change in the industry today, because of the fact that license fees have dropped so drastically. So I need to go with what is going on in the marketplace. So my Jason Statham movie would now cost $12 million instead of $25 million. And Jason Statham would have to say, and I'm going to say to him, dude, you have to defer half your fee because otherwise I can't get this made. So if you want us to make it, I'm going to pay you 2.5 now, I'm going to pay you 2.5 later. Is that okay or not? So these are the kind of conversations that are happening a lot today because we're going to make these movies for a lot less than what we used to make them for. The way to figure out what your budget should be is by working backwards after you spoke to the sales agent about what they think they can make for you. So when you talk about a TV series or a film movie budget, and you give your sales agent kind of the package that you're thinking about and the budget range you have in mind, let them do their job. They're coming back with their estimates, and then you want to stay about 75% of whatever your estimates should be, about 75% of your budget. That's kind of a range that is going to be okay. I'm not going to say it works, has worked for me so far. So the idea is not to be too far away from that number. Now, let's say the sales agent comes back and says, I can only cover 50% of your budget here. I'm sorry, but I don't see the value in this. Then you talk to the sales agent about what can I change? Why is it only 50%? And you can see whether or not you can apply changes to lift it up. Or you can say, I'm okay with the 50. I'm going to shoot it in Germany and in Belgium where I can get 50% in subsidies. That's a conversation that you can think about. So try to offset whenever you have low estimates, try to offset whatever the difference is with a non-recoupable finance source. Could be incentives, branding, whatever you don't have to pay back. Anything you don't have to pay back can make up for that difference. Just keep that in mind. Or work on your budget. So the estimates are really something that you will be guided with what your budget is going to have to be. So we talked about the director is attached first. We talked about the cast being attached later. And we kind of talked about what needs to be in these agreements in order for you to make them work. Do we have any questions about packaging? Moving on. Here are some budget line items that I have worked with. Now again, it's very project driven. These line items really are just a range for the stuff I have produced. Your stuff might be different. Your genre might be different. Your cast might be different. Just use it as a basic range just to give you an orientation, but just know the stuff is very project driven. So none of this might apply. But I wanted to give you a range of what I have used and what is kind of in the industry standards for a commercial A-level genre feature film, let's say. So that's kind of the ranges. And again, very cast driven, because if the cast is not A-level, you're not going to have a below and above a line of 50% because you don't need to. If your director is someone who is just really hot and did a great movie in England, like a short film, and you want to work with him and he does it for nothing, you're, again, above the line is not going to be 50%. If you do an art house movie, your above the line is not going to be 50%. Your below the line is going to be more. So, but any like A-level driven commercial product, you will find the above the line to be likely a large amount of your budget because it's just where the money goes, because that's where the value is. So just keep that in mind. It's also, of course, related to where do you shoot, how do you shoot, what do you shoot? Science fiction, a lot of visual effects. Movies, the movie that I did with Halle Berry with sharks, obviously those sharks weren't real sharks. They were animated sharks. We shot them in the water. They were sharks we built with machines. So all that stuff costs money. There are certain movies where you need to create certain things that might be more expensive. So think about the visual effects as a number that can go very much up or very much down. The other number that can go up and down depending on what's happening with COVID is the completion bond insurance and insurance in general. Right now, I've seen budgets to change, have insurance fees that are nearly 8 to 10% sometimes. It really depends on what it is. I didn't put that in there because I believe this is going to go down. I think this is all going to level itself out. But you could be faced with a situation where the bond company is going to let you do an additional insurance for COVID, and the insurance fees might go up. Contingency is always something that you can massage and negotiate with either your investor and or your completion bond. The completion bond is going to ask you to put in 10%. Your job is to negotiate them down to 5%. And you're going to negotiate them down to 5% by saying, A, I'm going to hire a line producer that you're suggesting, a bonded line producer that comes from you. The advantage in hiring a bonded line producer that comes from them is also in case you ever go over budget, in case something goes wrong, in case you might have to file a claim with the completion bond because it took longer, you spent too much money, and now the completion bond has to pay. It looks better to be in that situation if you have a bondable line producer that they suggested. I think I mentioned that to Toro too, because then you can say, the show was run by your guy, and I don't know what he did, I didn't know. I couldn't control him. Come up with some stupid excuse. Because if a claim is filed, you don't want it to linger on with you. So you go, because we only have 2 completion bond, I think now 2.5 completion bond companies on the planet. I always say 2.5 because one's always come and go. Film Finances, Bonded, IFG is already gone. So there's only a few completion bond companies you work with. So you're going to have to likely go back to them, and you want to make sure that they like you. So if you can point fingers at someone else and that's the bonded line producer, that's a good thing. Ideally, of course, you don't want to go over budget. Ideally, you want to stay within budget. So your job is, what happens early on, and you can see this, there are areas where you can go over budget. For example, if you take too long, if your shooting days are longer than they're supposed to be. There are 2 ways to deal with this. The way I do it, when I have a longer day, please don't repeat this, I buy a case of beer and a case of pizza. And I tell them, please don't charge me, my crew, don't charge me overages for today and yesterday, please. So I beg them not to charge me for this so I don't have to pay. So that I get away with having them work a little longer and everyone's happy and have a cup of beer. Alcohol on set, only in Europe, please. Anyway, the second thing you do is you start working on the script. You sit down with your director and say, okay, we lost 3 days. We now have to cut scenes because we need to make up that time. What happens with budget overages is directly connected very often to your schedule, because that's where the money goes. The longer you work, the more money you pay the people. Like when you build a house and it takes longer, it gets more expensive, the more people are building the house for longer. It's the same with the show and a movie. So try to cut scenes in your script so you can maybe make up the time you lost, or put locations together to make up time for company moves. So you need to then figure out something to go back in line. You have to be very very clever with visual effects. So here's the deal with visual effects, because visual effects is a tricky thing that can also take longer than it's supposed to. What I do when I do visual effects deals, I write down what assets I need to pre-produce. I write down the budget that the visual effect company gives me and the time frame they give me. So I make a deal very early on with the visual effect company that defines exactly what they need to do in the scope and in what time frame they need to do it. I then make the visual effect company responsible to keep that time frame. So if they take longer, they pay for the overage. I don't. If they come up with some nonsense, or the asset's not working, or something's blowing up and whatever happens with their computers, I make them responsible. So I do a deal with the visual effect company where I say, this is the budget, and if you don't keep it, I'm not going to change my assets. I'm not going to change the scenes. I'm not going to change anything. So as long as I don't change anything, they need to be living up to that schedule. Many times visual effects, it's always like, we got too busy. We had to do that movie for Disney and we didn't really have time to do your assets. So there's these conversations going on. So you don't want to be responsible for that stuff. Let them be responsible. Legal and finance fees, you can somewhat control. You do a deal with the lawyer that says, I'm going to give you a flat fee and an executive producer credit. They sometimes like this. And you do the movie for $20,000 and go home. Hourly rates, not ideal. Because I think I've yet to see a scenario where that works. I mean, in LA, you pay a lawyer between $400 and $800 an hour. It's insane. So don't do that. Try to get them to agree to a flat fee and have them handle as much as you need them to handle. For example, crew deals are done. They're basically formalized deals. The lawyer can give you a draft, use the draft, have the line producer execute. You don't need to have the lawyer do it. You're already paying a line producer or a UPM that can do this. Let them do the crew deals. The lawyer just gives you the drafts. You just plug in the names and the number. So try to take away as much as you can from the production crew deal things, location agreements, all the stuff that is normal for production. Take that away from him. Give it to your line producer. That's what I do, at least. In many cases, I just do the deals myself. What the lawyer should work on is the distribution deals, your sales agency deals, your karma agreement, and any finance deals. Those are the deals your lawyer should focus on, and obviously your bank closing. Let them just do that and just say, you know what, that's the only things I need you to do, and now you're giving me a quote for that. And then you're better off putting a flat fee in there. I have made the mistake not doing that, and I've done it twice because I'm an idiot. I didn't learn the first time, and I ended up with huge legal fees that ate into my fee because someone has to pay them, and that's me. So I didn't make as much money as I could be making, and I don't like that scenario. Finance fees are obviously related to the deals that you make with your financier, or the people that bring you the financier. In many cases, I've worked with brokerage firms that get me financiers, or capital firms, or boutique finance firms, or someone who knew someone that knew someone that then knew the billionaire. I mean, this happens all the time in Hollywood, trust me. So these people want to get paid. So for these broker fees, as I call them, I have a finance fee column in my budgets where I just estimate what that is. And depending on what project I'm putting together, I can kind of see. So I usually put in like 5%-ish for maybe 10 max for this kind of a scenario where I have to work with other people on the bigger budgeted stuff that I don't want to fund by myself. Any questions about this?
I have a question.
Yeah.
In regards to the lawyer, so technically the lawyer would the lawyer need to be hired in regards to development? Would that be part of the fee? No.
You don't have to. What I would do with what I have done in development is, if I did a deal with a showrunner, who I wanted to make sure does not end up having any rights to the idea that I wrote, to the idea that I created, I have my lawyer look at that deal. Just because I want to make sure that I'm protected because I created the idea and I'm hiring a showrunner. And showrunners are also seen as the creators. And I want to protect myself that they don't run away with the show that I created and then I'm out the door. This is a little dangerous. So that's the kind of deal I would say as an example in the development phase that I actually did have my lawyer look over. The writer deals that I do, option agreements, I do them myself. I know what they look like. And actually you can download them from the WGA website. So those are easy for me to do. So I don't think you need to worry about that. But if you do a showrunner deal, I would suggest yes. I also would have the lawyer maybe look at the pay or play offer to make sure you don't go to jail by making an offer that you can't live up to. Those are the things I would have him look at. But that's really the only two in the development phase. Okay. So you can tell him, I need you to help me with packaging, which is what both of these are. And I need you to help me with distribution and finance. The end. That's it. Yeah?
I had another quick question. So with the rise of the technology Unreal Engine, do you see that kind of minimizing some of the costs associated with post-production? Or is it really just shifting money from one hand to the other? Is there like a real benefit if you're using that in terms of reducing the chance of having overages and scheduling? I don't know what your kind of experience or input on that is.
Well, I haven't really done that scenario, honestly. The problem is when you deal with a completion bond, they kind of control all these elements. And it's really up to them to decide what are we doing in post? How are we handling the production? How are we handling delivery? What are the delivery elements? What do we want to bond? What don't we want to bond? So that's actually a good question I would like to pose to a completion bond company. I might see if I can reach out to Kurt Wollner, who runs Film Finance. Would you mind actually writing me an email about this? And I will forward your email to him. I actually would like his feedback on this. This is a great point. Because they are, in the end of the day, responsible to pay if something goes, sideways. And I think I would like to include them in this kind of conversation.
Okay.
You can put a pin. I'll check with the completion bonder. Any questions on anything? Okay. So the sales agent, what do they want? What do the buyers want? And how do we get to them? Basically, sales agents want what we believe to be valuable. And sales agents are, like most people, everyone's overwhelmed. They want something that they can sell easily. The more you give them, the better. The more your plan entails, your business plan / pitch deck, the better for them. The more you can show the sales agent the path to completion, the better for them. The same for the distributor. You want to give them as many elements as you can. You want to have a showrunner attached when you go to a network or a streamer. You want to have a cast attached when you start having your pre-sales done and go to the sales agent. These are just things you need, because otherwise people don't know what they're buying. It changes with the cast and the showrunner what they're buying. So it's going to have to be some level of packaging that you need to be doing before you can actually conclude a deal with like a pre-sale deal or a distributor deal, because they need to know what's what. Now, how you find these people? I mean, I really like the fact, honestly, that a lot of these markets are right now online, because you have access to these people. You have access to the sales agents. You look at who's the sales agent that would be right for me? What are they selling right now? What is similar to what I have? And are they dealing with the budget range I'm dealing in? That's how you look at the right sales agents for you that you would then contact. Like buyers, US buyers, I often go to the US buyers through an agency. Not that I can't go there direct, but the agents sometimes have a shorthand with them. So when I go to like a Disney, or I really don't go to Disney because they just do their own IP, but let's say I go to Netflix or Amazon or Apple or any of the networks, HBO, I use my agent to have the conversation first. If my agent is taking sleeping pills all day and doesn't get his shit together, or if I just feel it takes too long, then I'll step in and take over. So for you, it's a good thing to maybe start pitching your project also to agencies at the time where you have some money attached. Agents like to hear, I'm working on this project and I have an investor who's going to help me with the development. Or I'm about to close an investor who's going to help me with the development. They like that stuff. So that is something you can think about at the time when do you approach an agency. You can also use these film markets like the Cannes Film Festival, the American Film Market, the Berlinale, Toronto, MIP TV, MIPCOM, NetP. Those are the leading markets that we have. You can use those to meet other co-producers, to meet co-producers that might be in a region where you want to shoot. Maybe you want to shoot a movie in Spain and you're looking for a production company in Spain to get the 35% out of Spain. Or you go to our friend here, Maritera in Puerto Rico, and say, I want to work with you. Hello. Yeah, help me get my movie made over there because I want to tap in that 40% that you guys offer. So this is, the markets are a good place to also talk to people that can actually help you find incentives in the local regions. So when we talk about understanding the marketplace, we first talk about the story. What is our story? How strong it is? Who do we want to reach with it? Then what are we paying for it? And we're driven by sales estimates. Who do we want to work with on the buyer/sales agent level? And how do we deal with the investor? And how do we protect us from the risks that can happen? So when we do development financing, what are the risks? What are the rewards? The risk is that for the investor who gives you development financing is you never make the product. That's their risk. The reward is they're going to get 20% of their money, and they're going to get some back end, and they're going to get the development money plus the 20% back already before you even start shooting. Meaning when you have your closing is defined as the day the completion bond ensures your product, ensures your TV show or your movie. That's the legal definition of closing. On that day, which is usually maybe the day of principal photography, maybe it's shortly thereafter, maybe it's before in pre-production, that's usually when it happens. That's the day this investor already gets paid. So they don't have to wait for revenues, they don't have to wait for recoupment, they don't have a production risk on that level, they don't have a revenue risk. The movie could suck, they still make their money. That's the way to sell the development investor, to say, you're going to be in early, you're going to make your money even before I start shooting, and you're going to get back end no matter what, and you get paid right away. And it's a very short turnaround because I'm going to get this done in a year or two latest. So that's the kind of conversation you have with them. The production financing investor is someone who you talk to about giving you money, giving you the equity portion that we always talk about in our finance plan. And the conversation with them is, here's my business plan, here's my plan of attack, and I am going to use a completion bond to ensure the on-time production and on-budget production, so there's no production risk for you investor. So the movie is going to be finished and it's going to be delivered. And I have a sales agent who has done this before. Here are the projects that they have done that are similar, who is handling our distribution. So they know what they're doing. It's not me going door to door and knocking on, the distributors' windows. It's going to be someone who knows what they're doing. And here's the finance plan that I'm planning on doing for you. So equity investor, you can give me somewhere around 35% or so, or you can give me like 55% or so, because I'm not going to use a bank loan. Both situations are fine for the investor because the risk profile is not going to change. The equity investor recoups after the bank loan when he gives you the 35%. If he gives you 55%, there is no bank loan, so he recoups in first position. Some investors like that because they're going to make more money. It's more expensive for you, and you obviously give away more ownership. So that's something to think about. The bank financing is going to likely be less expensive, and you keep more ownership. The conversation you're going to have with this equity investor is also about what non-recoupable sources you are planning to include. You're always going to try to shoot in an incentive-driven region. You're going to find the incentive-driven region that gives you the most money if you can. You're going to try to include brands early on. That is going to require likely some kind of a domestic partner or some kind of a plan on how to reach eyeballs for them. And you can obviously work with music investors where you have them recoup against music royalties, which are really not part of your sales estimates anyway in your business plan. So on the surface of it, this looks like a non-recoupable finance source. But you're going to have some of these because the investor is going to want you to diversify their risk by using some of the monies that you don't have to pay back. Any questions on this?
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah. Oh,
So you use the term like development investor. Oh, can you hear me?
yeah, now I can hear you again. Sorry, you were frozen for a minute. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Development investor and production investor. Can you clarify that a little bit?
Yes, exactly. So there are two kinds of investors that I use. The development investor helps me put together the project, helps me pay for the writer, helps me do my pay or play offer and pay for the down payment, helps me maybe do a little bit of location scouting to fly to Puerto Rico, visit with Martier and get some, locations done over there. Helps me maybe get some money to my director who's going to work with me on, the pre-production portion of this. This investor is basically helping me put all the pieces together to get the project to a stage that I can basically get it bonded. That's what development financing means. This is the early stage financing that you need in order to kind of make it real, for lack of a better word. This investor has a different risk profile because their risk is really only related to you never making the movie. And their investment is connected to the IP as a turnaround. If someone else then makes the movie, they have a right to get that money paid back from that other producer that did what you didn't do. So the insurance for this investor is you're going to be connected to the IP as a turnaround clause. And the other insurance for the investor is your money is going to help make the movie happen. So the likelihood of the movie not happening is not as high if we do what we say we would do. And here's the plan of what I would do. And you get your money on the day of closing. So the day we start shooting the movie is when you already get paid everything plus your premium. So let's say an investor gives you $500,000 in development, and you use of that $100,000 to pay the actor, you give $50,000 to the director, you kind of spread it out. You bond the movie, and the investor says, I want 20% of my money, that's like $100,000. The day the completion bond closes and the movie is insured, which is when all the money sources are released and you can now produce your movie, is the day that investor will get $600,000 in one check. So they're not waiting for you to release the movie. They're not waiting for you to do any sales. They get the money right then and there. They're still going to participate in all the money that you're making with distribution because they're going to have a profit participation with you. So there's still part ownership in the IP. They're sharing some ownership with you because they also want to, be part of the upside. But it's not going to be like an equity investor. So the development investor back end, depending on how much they give you, is somewhere between 2 to 5%. Versus the equity investor who gets 50% of what the investment is that they give you in relation to the budget. So they get a much larger profit participation. They also get the 20% on their money, but the profit participation is larger. And the production investor invests in your finance plan as the portion that you need in order to finance the budget. Versus the investor for development only finances the development budget, which is a line item in your budget. So the budget that the equity investor finances, the production guy, actually includes the development. So the production investor theoretically pays for the development investor. In many cases, by the way, this is the same person. It's the same person that says, I'm going to give you the development and I want that portion back on closing, and I'm going to give you the production, and this is how that goes. So it's many times it's the same person, but it doesn't have to be the same person. Does that answer your question?
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much.
Another insurance you want to give to your investor is the fact that you're not only using a completion bond company, but you're using a collection agent. A collection agent is a neutral party. There are two, Freeway Entertainment, and you see Gadi's interview. I interviewed him about the subject matter. You have it on the canvas. Who owns Freeway Entertainment? He's the owner and CEO. And another company is called Vintage House, Vintage with an F. There's only two collection agents on the face of the earth. So you're going to be working with one or the other. They're both great. I work with Freeway a lot because I have an established relationship with them. So here's what they're going to do. For a lower budgeted project, they're going to charge you an initiation fee of around $5,000 to get everything set up, to give you the comma, to draft, da, 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 da. Larger budgets, they're likely not going to charge you initiation fee. So they're going to know it's a $20 million movie, we're going to make money. They make 1% of whatever revenues are hitting the collection account that they have to deal with. And here's what they do. They collect all the money that comes in from distribution, selling, from airline rights selling, from books selling, from merchandising selling, from wherever you sell, anything connected to the content that relates to a revenue. This could be distribution revenue, could be merchandising revenue, ancillary rights revenue. Everything goes into this one collection account that is basically like an escrow account that it's managed by this collection agent. And then the collection agent goes and says, here's what the sales agent gets. He gets a sales fee and his expenses. The guilds get their residuals. They get paid out of that. The bank gets the loan unless the bank wants to be outside of the collection account, which sometimes happens. Like Comerica, for example, when you work with them, they want to be paid back out of the collection account. So that means that they create a special account that will collect all revenues until they're paid off, and then it moves to the collection account. So this scenario also happens sometimes. So let's assume our collection agent pays the bank. They pay the bank back. They pay the mezzanine lender back if you have one. They pay the premiums to the mezzanine lender if there is a premium. They pay the equity. They pay the equity premium. They pay any deferments that you might have agreed, and they pay any profit participation. The advantage for you is you don't have to do any of it. You don't have to crowd your head with accounting. Don't do it. The even more important advantage to you is it's a legal protection. You never touched any money. So you cannot be liable for it not being there or not showing up or not being paid correctly. You're not liable because you never got it. I never got a dime. I'm waiting for my profit to come in. I'm exactly where you are. So you as a producer are protected. I cannot tell you how important that is. The investor will like the fact that you're not touching the money, so you don't go to Fiji or buy Gucci shoes. They will like that. So they will like the fact that you give the responsibility to an escrow agent, so to speak, and keep it entirely transparent. Because the collection agent will sell out reports. They send them out to all the parties, the sales agent, the guilds, all the producers that make money, all the investors that are supposed to be paid, everyone who has anything, even cast if they have deferments, will be part of the CAMA agreement, collection agent management agreement. So everyone comes together in this one agreement and they're all signatories to it and they all get reports. So we all know at the same time where our movie stands. How much money do we still have to make? How much money did we make? Where did it come from? Who did we sell to? So we see, aha, we got to deal with Sony. We got to deal with so-and-so. They paid, da-da-da. And it goes on forever. It goes on forever. I just got a check from Sony for a movie that I produced 10 years ago. Hallelujah. So it goes on forever. This is important for you because you will have this movie also in your library. It's going to be a little nest egg. So after everyone is paid, you're like, ooh, it's just me now. It's just me now. So then, you're still there. So keep that as a security mechanism, not just for your investor, but for yourself. It's important for you to think about that 1%, not as an, oh my God, I have to pay 1%. And with all the money that I'm making, that is so much money that goes to a collection agent. It's worth it. I cannot tell you how it's worth it. The investors love it because they feel there is a transparency. They feel that there is someone neutral that they can turn to. They feel it's not the producer who's supposed to be making movies, really not an accountant person. And they're also glad the sales agent does not put their hands on that money. In many cases, I cannot tell you, I always give these speeches with the Producers Guild. A majority of producers who are experienced people do not use collection agents. I don't know why. So they have the money going to the sales agent. The sales agent is not an accountant. The sales agent usually sits on the money for 3 months before they even tell you what came in and where it came from and what they're deducting. And what if the sales agent goes bankrupt? All their money is gone. Now what? Don't do that. That's why I say sales agent only if they agree to a collection agent and let the money go there and agree to be paid out of the collection agent management account. Questions? So we talked about the finance plan that help us reduce risks. We have a little bit of a conversation last time. We're going to just sum it up here a little bit. So when we have a finance plan that we work off and we put our little business plan together, we kind of want to work with these elements here. So we want to see that our estimates from international somewhere hit somehow the 70% mark, if possible. If that's not possible, we need to find non-recoupable finance sources that kind of manage this out. We want to see somewhere around 30% in pre-sales. We want to see our bank giving us a gap loan of 20%. The gap loan is the loan that the bank will give you based on the unsold rights. The bank gives you two versions of loans. The one loan is you're going to make your pre-sales, you have contracts, you take those contracts to the bank and you say, what do you give me for this and how much interest will you charge me? We haven't even dealt with interest yet. We're going to get there in a minute. And they say, I'll give you 90% of these contracts and I'm going to charge you 5% interest on this kind of loan portion. Okay, fine. And then after you did the pre-sales, you see how much is left because you have your sales estimates that say, I'm going to get 70% or 75% out of my, from the budget from all these rights that I'm selling around the world. Now you start selling pre-sales. Now the bucket gets smaller because you now sold rights out of the estimates and they're now gone. So now let's say you sold 35% of the 75%. You're left with 40%. The bank looks at the 40% and says, are you still selling these 40% rights? I'm going to give you half of that as a loan. So they give you 20%. That's the maximum they will ever give you. They will never give you more than 20% of your budget, and they will never give you more than half of whatever the value of your unsold rights are. So if the unsold rights value is higher than the 20% of your budget, it drops down to 20% of the budget, no matter how much the unsold rights are worth. Just know that, right? Some banks only give you 10%. They just say, we know you're going to have 40% still available to sell, but we're still only going to give you 10% in gap. That's just what they do. It's not the worst, but just know that, you know, the gap portion, depending on who you're working with and depending on who your sales agent is, the bank might not give you 20%. The likelihood of you getting that 20%, which is the maximum amount they give you, is very good if you have pre-sales that match the sales estimates or a little better even than the take number, which is a low number. You have a sales agent that is bankable. Those two things will likely get you to the 20% gap. So that's why it's important for you to work with the bankable sales agent and to realize pre-sales that actually match the numbers that the sales agent gave you on their sales sheet. You then have a mezzanine lender if you want to. It's basically a bank-like institution that gives you a loan that sits between the bank loan, that's a senior loan, and the equity. That's also sometimes referred to, the mezzanine loan, as the junior loan or super gap. It recoups right in between there. And it's usually around 5 to 15% depending on how much rights you have still available, because they look at what's available to see how they get paid back. So they want to make sure after the bank recouped, there's enough collateral for them to cover their investment. And then you can obviously have your equity, depending on what is left. Don't do more than 35% if you can, and only go up if you don't have a bank loan and no mezzanine loan. The tax incentive should ideally always be at least 20%. It should be possible nowadays. There's so many states and so many regions where we can make 20% on the budget. So try to choose those regions. If you can get crowdfunding or crowdsourcing done, do it. It usually works better for lower budgets than higher budgets. Brand integration is always a beautiful thing. It's fun to work with brands on you know, including them in your script with stories. It's kind of a fun thing to do. And it's great to work with brands because they also promote your movie. So when you do a deal with like McDonald's, I'm just giving a great example, you know, your movie's going to be like, there is a toy about the movie in the kids box or something like that. So the advertising value of working with brands is great for you because it elevates the awareness about the movie. So that to me is a huge advantage of working with a brand. The disadvantage is you might have them hover over you on the set going, that's my Pepsi bottle needs to be lit a little better. I mean, not kidding, shit like this happens. So they show up on set and they want to see their brand in the right light, literally. And also, you know, they want to make sure that the brand is not shown in a scene that could be negatively affecting the message of the brand. So those kind of conversations, they're fun. They could also be a little annoying. In-kind services would be post-deferments and music investments. We talked about music investments. These are music investment companies that look at your music production budget and say, if you do enough original scoring for this movie, we'd like to invest this much, and we're going to pay for this for the composer is the word I was looking for, and we're going to pay for your music supervisor, and we're going to deal with that, and we're going to recoup all our money from the music royalties. So that's a deal you make with them. Post-production companies often give you deferments. So that means they look at your post-production budget and they say, we're going to make you pay 50% on closing, then we're going to defer 50% to later to the revenues, and we're going to charge you a premium of 10% on that 50% because we're taking risk. So that reduces your post-production budget, and it really helps with not having to raise all that money for post-production. So these are kind of the financing sources that help you reduce risk because they reduce some of the elements that you're dealing with. I hope you can see this. I'm going to walk you through that. By the way, I'm going to send you this study that I'm walking you through right now as an Excel. You're going to have it on your module, but I'm going to send you the Excel anyway. So no worries if you can't read it. I'm walking you through it. I'm giving you an example here of a movie that's $5 million. Yeah, right in the middle. And I'm basically telling you that this movie is financed by an equity investor that gives you all the money. Your grandmother says, oh, I love the project so much, I'm going to give you $5 million because I have saved it up. Here you go, girl. So you're going to take your grandmother's $5 million and you're going to make your movie. The sales agent tells you you're going to make 75% of the budget in your international revenues, and we're going to probably be able to realize 35% as a US revenue. So this is the estimates that you have. And you can say, Grandma, fantastic. We're going to make money on the movie. Yay, because I'm going to make more than what I'm spending. I'm already, like, the estimates are fabulous. Grandma's very happy. You go do the movie. You're obviously working with a collection agent. You're obviously working with a sales agent. And you want to give your grandma 20% premium because that's what equity investors get. Okay, Grandma says, hallelujah, we're going. Here's what happens. We're going, and this is what happens. You're going to get all their money, yes, but then you're going to have to pay a few people. Collection agent is paid 1%. Sales agent is paid 16%. You know, grandma wants us $5 million, and maybe you don't even get to pay grandma the premium because you're running a loss of $435,000. She's not going to be happy. So point is, equity is not always leading you to the golden grail of making any money, because this is what usually happens. And we are actually going by the numbers that I told you are good numbers to use if you want to create a solid finance plan for your movie. We're saying we're going to make 75% international, yay, and we're going to actually sell the US for 35, which is not totally bad. You're losing money by taking 100% equity. So let's look at what this scenario would look like if we are using all the finance elements that we talked about. We're now using pre-sales, we're using bank gap, we're using a loan, we're taking 20% down payments from our distributors, and we are doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing, and we do a different finance plan. So we go back to grandma and say, Grandma, you know what? I'm only going to use some of the money that you want to give me. I know you want to give me $5 million, but we're going to spread it over 3 movies. So let's take just a third of that and put it into this movie. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to put in, we're going to still have this, it's a little it's tiny, but I'm going to walk you through it. So we're going to do a pre-sales. The pre-sales were, I think, 35%. So in this case, it's 1.75 million in case you can't see it. Now, what happens when you do pre-sales, the distributors are usually giving you a down payment of around 20%. Sometimes it's 10, it's something usually. In many cases, it's 20% up front when they sign the deal with you on the distribution deal, and then they pay 80% when you deliver the movie. So that 20% is paid to you on signing, and it's sitting there waiting for you when the bond company closes to be released to you. So that money you have 20% sitting there, and in our case, the down payment is $350,000. So yeah, we have the first $350,000 because we pre-sold. Now the bank is going to look at the pre-sold contracts, and they will give you a loan for the balance, for the 80, because you already got the 20, the bank will give you the 80. In this example, we're not using interest. We're going to work with interest later. So the bank will pay the pre-sales, and then you're going to go and say, I have these pre-sales, I have these estimates, I want my gap loan. The bank will give you 20% of a gap loan. So now the bank loan in our scenario for this $5 million movie is $2.4 million, using a gap loan as we have described earlier and using our pre-sales. So the incentive, we're going to show that an incentive region is 20%. So all we're doing here right now is we're using a bank and an incentive, nothing else. That's all we're using as elements. That reduces our equity to, I'm so blind, 25%, $1.25 million. So that's all grandma's going to give us right now. The numbers are the same. The value is the same. The movie is the same. Everything is the same. And let's see how much money we're making, or if grandma is still in the woods. Ta-ta. No. We're making $327,688. Same movie, same everything. Changed finance sources and elements. So that tells you how important it is to think about these finance elements and put your movie together using these things. Even if someone says to you, I'll give you all the equity. Your answer is, I'll take half of it. Then I'm not going to maybe do the bank loan. And I'm going to still do the incentive. Even in that case, you would probably be close to this. So just keep in mind that the finances change very much depending on where your money is coming from. Herb, you has a question. Go ahead. William, sorry.
It's all good. My question is, if you do say get more equity than you probably would like, would you just offset that by increasing the size of your budget of your movie to enable you to get more cash or things like that? No,
don't do that, because you're screwing with your return. The fact that you use more money and the sales estimates are still going to be the same, because you're not changing an element unless you use the more money to buy a higher level actor and then increase.
That's what I meant. Yeah,
that's good. That you can do. So let's say you have an equity investor that says, I still want this, and then you say, okay, fine. If that's the case, I think we should go for an A-level actor that is this. We should pay the money with the cast so that we can elevate our revenues. That you can do. Or you can tell the investor, I'm going to take all your money, but I'm going to keep this portion for my next project, which is going to have similar elements, and you can still approve it, but I'm going to keep it in an escrow account. I'm not going to touch it, but I'm going to use it for the next project. That you can also do. Does that make sense? Good. So that's that. Made a little thing. So let's talk about the group project, and let's talk about the business plan. Obviously, you don't have to do the group project. It's an extra credit project. If you're not in a group or you don't want to do the group project, don't do it. There is no must. I just want you to know how to put a business plan together and what elements need to be in there. I'm going to send you this PDF, of course, as always. So you want to have a project introduction and a log line. The log line is 5 sentences, no more. Short, precise, tells you exactly what it is about. This document, when you put together the creative side of it, is basically a sales pitch. So don't be too, you don't have to be, I shouldn't say this, but you don't have to be like too accurate with what's going on in the script. You just have to know what the vibe of your movie is supposed to be transporting, and you put that in there. This is a sales document. You're basically selling the gist of your story. So you put together a log line that is a sales pitch that people read like, oh God, I want to know more now. You put a 1-page summary together, and the summary is also written in a way that it's kind of an enticing piece of marketing material. It doesn't kind of like go, and this is what happened next, and that's what happens next, and this what's happened next. That's not how you write this. You write this in a way where someone reads the summary and says, wow, this is very enticing story. I want to see this. You prepare you put your lead actors and your potential lead actor cast and your lead actor role description and arc in there. So the leading roles, you have probably 2 or 3 or 4 lead roles in your project. You describe those. You don't have to go into the like supporting roles, so don't worry about that. You're going to share the vision that the director has for this movie, and you're going to share your vision. And your vision is going to include why this project is relevant today. Why are you making this now? Why does it have a relevance in the marketplace? You're going to obviously talk about the shooting location. You're going to work with visuals that are resembling your genre. And you're going to choose visuals that are supporting the kind of mood you want to create with the film visually. So choose images when you go online and you pick them that kind of would be images that you could have made, they could have been stills from your movie in essence. So really stick close to the colors you want to use, the mood you want to use. Try to be very sensual and emotional about the pictures that you're choosing. You obviously will talk about who this movie is for, your target audience, and what marketplace you want to capture and why. You'll talk about some of the brand partnerships you're envisioning and how they will help you market the movie. You're also going to talk a little bit about how you'll market the movie, as in, am I aiming for a theatrical release or not? Am I okay with doing online / theatrical together? What is my plan here? What can I get away with? We'll talk a little bit about similar projects and similar revenues to kind of give the baseline for what your project can achieve financially. Relevancy today, already talked about. You're going to provide a short top sheet budget that basically just says, here's what the main numbers are, what the top sheet budget looks like. You're going to find in the module. You're going to put the sales estimate sheets in there, and then you're going to talk about the finance plan, which it's going to look a little bit like what you saw right now. And then you're going to add the projected returns for your equity investor, which is not included in what you saw right now. Now, the equity investor's return of investment relates to A, the money that they're getting in the premium, and B, the money that they're getting with the profits, and that goes in relation to the money that they're giving you. So that's how the ROI percentage is calculated in the end, and we'll talk about that as we move forward in the module. We will talk about risks. You're going to spell those out very clearly. You're going to say in there, dear investor, you can lose all your money. It needs to be in there. You need to disclose it because this could potentially happen. You're going to talk about the fact that they can lose the money. You're going to talk about the risks that exist, and you're going to talk about how you mitigate those risks. Production risk. I'm mitigating the production risk by using a completion bond company that ensures the production and the delivery and ensures the money and staying on budget. Revenue risk. Where does the money go? How does it go? I am offsetting that risk by using a collection agent who manages all the revenues and the disbursement and expenses. Those kind of things are important for the investors to know. Track record of your team. It's going to be you, it's going to be your director, your showrunner, and then you're going to maybe use a co-producer or an executive producer that you combine forces with that has done this before. And these are the main elements that you need to put into your business plan pitch deck. And depending on where this thing goes, you're going to lose some things. So let's say you use the pitch deck to pitch to Netflix. The pitch deck that you use for Netflix, that does not need to include the ROI for the investor and the sales estimates and all the financial stuff. They don't care. If you send it to a studio, they don't care. They know what the numbers are. They just want to know, what is your idea? What is your vision? How do you want to do it? Why it is so juicy? They want to know all about the creative side of things. Forget the finance side. When you talk to your investor, that's when you use this. They want to see everything. They want to see the idea. They want to get their creative juices flowing and being proud to be part of it. And they want to see it also makes financial sense. That is what you're dealing with early on. This is the first piece of paper you're going to put together when you start your journey. So again, you can do this on your own, just for funsies. And I'm going to look at your pitch deck and I'll give you feedback. All good. You're going to get example pitch decks on the modules so that you can see this fleshed out. This is a process that's going to take you a while to put together because you're learning about all these elements that go in there throughout the course. And you can do it with your group and you can all work together on one. And then on the last day we're meeting, you're going to pitch it to me and I'm going to have someone else with me and we'll give you feedback on your pitch deck. So this is our group project. Any questions on this? No questions? What time is it? Let me just check here so I don't want to ride you too long. It's 12. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to walk you through the assignment study that comes after this because I think we spend a lot of time on stuff. I always talk too long, I'm sorry. And you're not going to need it because it's on the module. So I let you go You can enjoy your weekend. Some of you have office hours signed up with me, so I'll be meeting you after this. And if anyone has any questions, you always know, email me, I'll respond to them fairly quickly, usually within 24 hours. And if you want, the next office hours will be in 2 weeks again when we meet again in 2 weeks. But if you have something that you need to talk about urgently or want to talk about urgently, just email me. And if I have time, I'll set something up, no worries. So I'm not going anywhere, I'm there. I just wanted you to have a set time for office hours so you know, okay, all is worse, I'll see her in 2 weeks for sure. So just know we can always do something in between as well. I think that's it. Are we good?
Thank you for your time.
You're very welcome, guys. Now you go have a nice weekend.
Yeah, thank you. It was awesome.
Thanks so much.
you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you,
Great
Jeanette.
weekend. Keep
Bye.
See you
safe,
next time.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye. All right, how do I stop the recording? Stop share, and now recording. Where is my recording?
Yeah, I just have a question. Where can I find the discussion with all questions that you answered? Because I'm trying to find
it's
it.
on the discussion portal on your Canvas.
I don't see that.
It's when you go into a Canvas on your left side, there should be something that said discussion.
Oh.
Let me stop recording.